Hello again, everyone. It is Gordon Majak here. Hard to believe, right? Back with another episode of Timeless Pop, Rock, and Soul. And I have to be honest, folks, I am pretty full of myself right here at the moment. Pretty proud of myself because every time I look down here at my iPad and I see this album cover, for this record and these two songs that I am going to play for you today, two videos in a row here. I look and see this album cover and it just takes me straight back to early 1974 and just another landmark album back there in my childhood. I would have been, 15 going into 16 that year in 1974. This was just one of those landmark records for me, not only back there in the day in 1974, but just a record that stayed with me really through my whole adult life as well, even up to the present day. I hear these songs now, and it is just pure gold, pure magic. And one of my favorite records of 74, one of my favorite records of the 70s in general, and definitely one of my favorite records in the outstanding catalog of one of my favorite artists, and that is the Doobie Brothers. Man, I have been waiting to play these two songs for you today from this record for I don't know how many months, and I don't know why I have just continually put it off and put it off and put it off, and finally today I cannot stand it any longer. It being Sunday, it just adds to the element of the whole thing here, the passion of the whole thing for me, and I just cannot wait to play these two songs. What were once vices are now habits. So this would have been the fourth Doobie Brothers album there. It comes out in early 74, as I said. And I was already a huge Doobie Brothers fan by that point. I became a Doobie Brothers fan basically overnight there in the summer of 72. The first few times I started hearing their great album, Toulouse Street, on the FM radio. That was an instant favorite album for me, and I loved the Doobies from the jump, right from there. I was way into them. And of course, they followed up Toulouse Street, which was a great album and the first exposure I had to them. They followed that up with another Doobie Brothers classic in 73, The Captain in Me, another record just chock full of great songs, right? China Grove and Long Train Runnin' and South City Midnight Lady and Dark Eyed Cajun Woman. Just one great Doobie Brothers song after another on The Captain in Me. And then the following year, they turn right around and do it again. What were once vices are now habits. Man, I wore this album out back there in 74. I had that poster. They had a poster inside the album of this shot that featured this shot and some of their exploits on stage. And I had that poster on my wall, and I wore this freaking album out back there in 1974. They come out with this one there in early 74, and so many great songs again. This is right there in the middle of that run that classic lineup of the Doobie Brothers had before they got to the Michael McDonald era. This is the Tom Johnston, Patrick Simmons, Tyran Porter, John Hartman, Michael, what's the drummer's name, who I'm forgetting? Michael Hosek, and then Keith Knudsen. This is that era of the Doobie Brothers before Michael McDonald became involved. So this first classic run that classic lineup had right there with Toulouse Street, The Captain and Me, this record, they followed this one up with Stampede. They followed that one up with Taking It to the Streets in 76. 77, it was Living on the Fault Line. I think what year was Minute by Minute when Michael McDonald really hit it big with the Doobie Brothers there in 78. Just one after another. And this was right there in the early stages of that run by these guys. And what an album. So many great songs on this album. I just loved Song to See You Through there on side one of that album. Of course, Black Waters on this album, Eyes of Silver and Road Angel. That's just side one, and that's not even every song on side one. Side two, though, is where the action is for us today, and that features two songs that I'm going to play for you. The first of which is a Patrick Simmons composition called Tell Me What You Want and I'll Give You What You Need, one of the legendary song titles of all time. Always loved that title by Patrick Simmons. And then in our next video, we will do the Tom Johnston classic, one of my all-timers, a particular Doobie Brother favorite for me, and a particular 70s favorite, and just a particular favorite of a time in my life when I was feeling a certain way back there in 1974, and Tom Johnston was speaking straight to it, and that was his classic song, Another Park, Another Sunday. That will be in the next video here coming up right after this one. So we'll do a twofer on the Doobie Brothers today. Right now, we are going to do in this video, as I said, the Patrick Simmons album track. It was not a single, but man, when I bought this album and was playing this album over and over, side one, side two, I just kept going through this album. I had every lick on this album memorized. And one of the songs that just touched me so deeply right from the very beginning, didn't matter if it was a hit or a single, didn't matter if it ever got played on the radio, because I would never forget this one. The Patrick Simmons song, Tell Me What You Want and I'll Give You What You Need. It's just got that Maui vibe to it. You know what I mean? Patrick Simmons, I think, has lived on Maui, or certainly had a residence there for many years, many decades, I think, going back there to the 70s. And if there's anybody that could really embody that Maui vibe in a pop or rock tune, boy, it sure would be Patrick Simmons. And he brings all of that chill to this record. And I have always thought from the very beginning, when I first heard this on the album back there in 74, I just thought, man, this is one of the best songs that this dude has ever written and ever will write. And in hindsight, all these years later, it certainly appears to be the case, for me personally at least. This is just right up there among my very favorites by Patrick Simmons. And that's saying something, because this is the guy, I made a little list here. I mean, this is the guy who wrote Blackwater, South City Midnight Lady, Wheels of Fortune, that great song from the Taking It to the Streets album. How about I Cheat the Hangman from the Stampede album in 75? That was just an epic Doobie Brothers song. Of course, the ballad Toulouse Street, which was the title track of that album in 72 that I said was really their breakthrough album and the album that first grabbed my attention. By the Doobie Brothers. So Patrick Simmons, just one great song after another, of course. He's also a heck of a singer, has contributed so many great lead and harmony vocal parts to these Doobie Brothers albums over the years. And what can you say about his musicianship? I mean, Patrick Simmons is an absolute consummate virtuoso of stringed instruments. He can play all manner of acoustic and electric guitars to an extremely high level, but he doesn't stop there. All of the stringed instruments at various times, I think he played all of them on various Doobie Brothers albums. And just such a multifaceted musician, the master of so many styles and genres and sounds, just an incredible finger picker, of course. We know that from seeing the Doobie Brothers live in concert. Patrick always put on a clinic when it came to finger picking, but could also play the hell out of some rock and roll guitar. His acoustic stuff was always super tasty. Just an incredible virtuoso, the great Patrick Simmons. And of course, one of the true foundational building blocks right there of the Doobie Brothers' whole career, right there with Tom Johnston, and I suppose with Michael McDonald, who came along later on and helped keep the whole thing going and keep it all together. But certainly Patrick Simmons, one of the rocks from the start and through all of those various incarnations of the Doobie Brothers, he was one of the real constants, right, that really kept it all sounding so good, and still does to this day from what I have heard. God, this record, man. Side one was a killer. I mean, side one was just great. And then you flip it over in side two, and man, in that second track on side two, we get the Patrick Simmons tune, Tell Me What You Want and I'll Give You What You Need. And I just can remember hearing this back in the day and just going, holy cow, that is a whole different kind of vibe to hear on a pop or rock album. but the Doobie Brothers and Patrick Simmons pulled it off. We'll give quick musical credits here as well. The great Jeffrey Skunk Baxter contributes some pedal steel guitar to this song. You'll hear Skunk on here. The great Arlo Guthrie on the auto harp. And of course, Milt Holland on the tabla and the vibraphone. From 1974, man, this album is an all-timer for me. The Doobie Brothers, what were once vices are now habits. It is that classic lineup, and in this case, it is the great Patrick Simmons stepping out front for this outstanding album track, always a favorite of mine. Tell me what you want, and I'll give you what you need. Early 1974, it takes me straight back. Oh my God. What a sound. What a vibe. Now, I do not know for a fact that Patrick Simmons was already living in Maui or already had his place in Maui by the time they did this record there in probably, late 73, they would have been recording this. And so I don't know for sure if he was already a resident of Maui at that point. But if he was, you can sure feel that Maui vibe just chilling all over the place on this song. And if he wasn't already there, it sure shows the direction that he was heading, or at least one aspect, sort of musically, the direction that Patrick Simmons was heading, because you can sort of hear it futuristically in this record, just dripping all over the place. Total chill. What a great chill record. Such a sweet-hearted, passionate, romantic, grooving record by the great Patrick Simmons, out in front of that classic Doobie Brothers lineup with Tom Johnston on guitar and some harmony vocals. I'm sure Patrick Simmons, multiple vocal parts on that song, both the lead and some backgrounds by himself as well, of course. And all over all those stringed instruments, as I said, various guitars. Tom Johnston on vocals and guitars as well. The great Tyran Porter on bass. And then in the back line there, you had John Hartman on the drums. And these parts on the drums were actually recorded by Michael Hossack, who had been one of the members going back there a few years to the beginning on the Toulouse Street album. And even before that, I think on their very first album. But Michael Hossack, of course, left the band after these sessions were done. And then, so he was out of the band, and Keith Knutson came in. But Keith Knutson had not actually played on any of these songs, but he was a full-on band member at that point by the time they got around to touring behind this album. But out there in front, yeah, what a legend, man. Patrick Simmons. And as I was thinking about this, hearing this back in the day, I'll tell you, I think, thinking back to it, I think probably Chicago and the Doobie Brothers were certainly two of my very favorite bands by this point. By 1974, what were the Eagles doing? The Eagles would have been on the On the Border album. So the Eagles would have been right up there among my favorite artists as well. But man, I think Chicago and the Doobie Brothers were probably my two favorite bands at that stage. And for the Doobies to come out with just another killer record like this one, I was already all over them and way deep into them and just loved their catalog so much, and the stuff that I just played over and over and over. And as I said, as the years go by, man, this stuff ages like fine wine. Such a beautiful musical synergy in this band. They did some pretty incredible stuff, and they did so much of it somehow under the radar. And I have never quite figured out that part, because these guys had so much ability on so many levels. And as I've said before, from having seen them in concert so many times back there in the 70s in various lineups, man, these brothers could throw down on stage like few others. So just a remarkable band, and certainly one of my all-time favorites. The Doobie Brothers. Tell me what you want, and I'll give you what you need. Yeah, baby, that's the way to talk to her, right? Patrick Simmons putting it all out there, all the chill and all the Maui vibes. What lady can resist that? Now, come on, that stuff is irresistible. And speaking of irresistible, we're coming back with some more irresistible ear candy by the Doobie Brothers. It's pretty bittersweet, but it's like the finest chocolate, the finest dark chocolate. That little bittersweet tone in there is what gives it all the magic. And we are going to hit another song from this album that back in the day just got me, and I never let go of it, and it's still one of my favorites today. Another Park, Another Sunday coming up. Be there in a minute. I'm coming right back. See ya. Patrick Simmons, man, what a giant musician that guy is.